Laila Cunningham.
Hi.
48, can hardly believe it, year old mother of 7 children.
Yeah.
You left the Conservative Party in 2024.
I did.
To join Reform, and you are going to be the next Reform candidate for London Mayor. That's what we know, but I want to find out who Laila Cunningham is in this interview.
Sure.
So I said you're a mother of 7. Your first marriage ended. You were alone raising 4 children. You said that that was difficult. It must be difficult being alone and raising 4 children, right?
Yeah, I mean, they were quite little. It was difficult because it can be quite isolating because, you know, you raise the 4 kids and there's no one to kind of offset, you know, what's this? What should I do? If they're ill, you're the only one around. In a way, it was one of the hardest times of my life, but one of the best because it's an unbreakable bond that you create with your kids. It was us against the world kind of thing. What was also hard was raising men as a woman. Because, you know, boys at some point, they do want kind of a father figure. But I did meet my second husband. But, you know, raising men as a woman is not the easiest thing alone. But no, honestly, it was hard because obviously, you know, you're alone raising these 4 little humans suddenly. And your responsibility is to make them into the best humans they can. And you don't want to give them any of the negative things that you're going through because of a divorce or because of life, and you want to shield them from that. And I think I did. And actually, I've raised the people I like hanging out with the most.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And you were an early sort of departee of the Conservative Party in 2024. Yeah. My goodness, there's lots more since.
I know.
Have you made particular friends with any of those former Tory politicians? Is there anybody that really gets Laila?
I haven't had the chance to spend that much time with them. You know, things happen fast in Reform and in politics. I would like to sit down with them and get to know them. Listen, when I've heard their speeches, everything they said I could relate to. And I do think it is a particular person that defects to Reform. It's kind of a principled person who really just is in it to do good for the party. I mean, that's why I am. And good for the country, not the party. And so I think we could become very good friends, but I haven't had the opportunity yet.
I tell you what, you could do with some lefties, though. I mean, there's a lot of Tories joining your party.
For sure. I think there will be so-called lefties. I don't think it's about left or right anymore, honestly. I just think it's about voters. You know, I honestly think it's about voters who just want a government, who just don't want to give half their money to the government and not get anything back. They want secure borders. They want safe streets. They want public services that work. They want to put up their flag, for God's sake. And, you know, they want a country that kind of recognizes the sovereignty of the country. And I think that's why it's not about left or right anymore. You know, to be fair now, Gloria, you know, if you believe in sovereignty, if you believe in putting British people first, if you want to stop the boats and if you want a flag up, you're right wing. I
would say that. I'm Labour. Yeah, I would say that, but I hold those values. You know,
but you're not like the rest of your party. You know, we have been called far right for wanting that.
They would contest that. You are a Muslim.
Yeah.
How important is your faith to you?
I mean, listen, my faith has always been a spiritual side of the faith. You know, for me, it's not all about me. There's something else, you know. When I was young and I don't know, I want to smoke a cigarette, you know, my parents would be like, God's watching.
Did you smoke the cigarette?
Well, my kids don't know. But actually, you know, because I play basketball, if any of us smoked and we'd be breathless on the court, we'd get told off. So that definitely kept me off the cigarettes. But it has nothing to do with my politics, you know, absolutely not. And I do find it very disappointing that Muslim politicians in our political sphere tend to put their religion at the forefront. You know, for instance, Sadiq Khan, whenever you criticize London, he says, oh, you know, they just can't take it that there's a Muslim mayor. It's got nothing to do with him, you know, that he's Muslim. They say it's Islamophobic to criticize him. Honestly, it's got absolutely nothing to do with it. It is purely on his record. And I do think it's a shame that religion is always brought in. And I find it particularly from the Muslim politicians. They always try and bring religion into it and try and scream Islamophobia or some kind of discrimination. And I think that's wrong, because if you're a politician in this country, your priorities and your allegiance is to the country. Otherwise, you shouldn't run.
But you will no doubt have been subject to anti-Muslim hatred. I just looked on social media last night. It is not hard to find people who call for you to be deported.
Yeah.
You were born in this country.
Yeah.
I found social media messages to call for your 92-year-old mum from Egypt to be deported back to Egypt with you, by the way.
British, yeah.
Yeah? How do you feel when you see messages like that?
Initially, I was shocked. I actually didn't know that kind of sentiment existed in our country. But listen, Gloria, I was at an event, an Adam Smith event, and a young girl came up to me and she said, "Why do they hate us so much? I'm also Muslim." And she says, "Why do people hate us so much?" And I said, "Listen, you've got to understand that you do have Muslim politicians such as Sadiq Khan, who rams the fact that he's Muslim as a reason not to criticize him, who, you know,
he would contest that. I'll just say that.
Yeah, but he does call people Islamophobic who criticize him.
But he has the most secure, I mean, you would as well, you know, arguably because...
I don't think people hate him.
If you were to win. Well, I mean, he's won 3 elections, to be fair to him.
But I don't think the criticism of him is not because he's Muslim. It's because his record is terrible. We can argue on that. But and you have Muslim politicians who kind of, you feel, are working perhaps for their faith first or their community, but you can argue with that one on it. And I told her, listen, you've got to understand that they see Sharia courts flourishing. They see women in a burqa. They see Islamic terrorism. They see the Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs. They see people calling, you know, death to the West. And that is coming from Muslims. I'd say they're radical Muslims, and it's being shoved down their throat. And they're like, for God's sake, we've had enough. We don't want this.
But that's not representative of people who are Muslims.
100%. It's not representative of me. But I was trying to explain to her where that hatred comes from. You know, I do find it offensive, but in a way, I kind of understand where they're coming from. They don't want another Muslim politician who's going to shove the religion down their throat. They don't want another Muslim politician who's going to fight for Islamophobic laws. They don't want another Muslim politician who's going to cover up Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs because they're Muslim and, you know, for community cohesion. And they don't want that. I don't want that either. And that's why I don't think religion should ever come into play. In fact, the Times, when I had an interview at the Times, she asked me, did you suffer racism when you were young because you were Muslim? And I had to think about it. And I said, you know what? No, I didn't, because nobody cared. And nobody even knew I was Muslim, not because I hid it, but because nobody asked and nobody cared. You didn't wear it as a demographic badge. You were nice, we were friends, we weren't. And I want to go back to that. You know, I want to go back to where you're judged on merit, on who you are, your personality, not on where your parents came from, your religion, and I think that's important.
Hello, I'm Bev Turner. Now, it can feel like the money in our bank accounts at the moment does not keep up with the cost of living. And maybe there's a solution. I'm here today with the CEO of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. Cameron, what is TallyMoney?
Well, Bev, with TallyMoney, you get a current account and a debit card, but instead of pounds, you use milligrams of gold as your everyday money.
So why gold?
Gold traditionally is a great store of value. It has, on average, gone up at over 11% per annum for the last 25 years against the pound. It's tripled in value in the last decade. And in the last 2 years alone, it's increased by 50% against the pound. Banks' savings products just can't compete with that level of growth.
But this isn't just about gold. This is about a currency that you guys have created at TallyMoney. Explain it to me as though I'm an idiot.
So, look, people need to be able to hold their earnings and build their savings in a money that retains its value and remains in their legal control and remains theirs to access, away from government control.
Great. You had me at not exposed to government control.
You should feel safe and happy with your money. You should have peace of mind. The more money you see in your bank balance, and that's the type of thing we're trying to deliver, and give people choice in the type of money they get to use every day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cameron. Thank you.
But there are people who are vile, the social media examples that I found. Presumably you don't want people like that who are racist and vile to vote for you. Surely your argument is, jog on.
Oh, jog on, yeah. What people have to understand is reform is not about hate at all. And those who want to demonize or hate certain groups, it's not what we're about. For instance, I got a lot of hate online as well for attending a pride march. You know,
I saw that.
And I will always march for gay rights. You know, my people very close to me were arrested in Egypt for being gay and tortured in prison. My best friends are gay. And I will always march for gay rights. It does not mean that I am pro-trans rights, because I don't believe that women, you know, I'm very pro-women's rights and I'm very anti-trans, encroaching on that. And I've always been very forthright about that. But they always conflate everything online, right? You do one thing, it means you do this. And they don't understand the nuance of the argument. And I do want to get out the message in London. We're really not about hate. We are about, though, prioritizing people of this country. And if you love this country, no matter where you're from, who you pray to, or who you choose to love, reform's for you.
We'll come to that in a minute, because what if you are a burqa wearing woman? Some women wear the burqa as an interpretation of Islam to dress modestly. Now, women, my goodness, we're criticised for everything. I mean, shouldn't politicians not criticise anybody for how they choose to dress? Don't we have enough on our plates as women?
So the burqa has nothing to do with religion, actually. The Quran says you have to be modest. It is a form of oppression. It's a cultural, a radical form of Islamic culture, you could say. It's banned in certain Middle Eastern countries. In Tunisia, you cannot wear the burqa. And for me, it is a sign of oppression, actually. But I agree that you shouldn't tell people what to wear. Who am I to tell a woman if she wants to wear it? And I'm not saying don't wear it. I am saying that if you have a face covering in London, I want to see that as a reason for stop and search. And I have spoken, actually, to a few shops somehow in Knightsbridge where you do get, and they said that they do come in a burqa and they steal. I had to prosecute a woman in a burqa. You cannot, if you ban all face coverings, but you let women wear a burqa, what prevents criminals from wearing it and committing crime? You don't know who's behind that burqa. You cannot assume that it's only women. You have to ban face coverings, because since they've become normalized since COVID, crime has become more brazen, and it provides a cloak of anonymity for criminals that the decent person doesn't have.
So a woman can wear, but just let me get your position clear on the burqa. So
you can be in London,
Britain.
In Leila's London, I would expect that if you are wearing a face covering, that will be a reason to be stop and searched by the police.
And how do you think, if you are a woman who chooses to do that and interprets the Quran in that way and chooses to dress modestly?
It really has nothing to do with religion. So it's oppressive. It is a form of oppression, and it has absolutely nothing to do with religion. And listen, if you want to wear the burqa and you want your wife to wear the burqa and you don't want any kind of criticism or pushback on that, perhaps England is not the country for you.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it is not a sign of an open society, an open, free society. And if anything England stands for, why people come here is because the freedom it gives to people.
Let's look at how you are polling. I'm just going to focus on one particular element of it. So there was a YouGov poll which found that over 4 in 10 Brits and half of Londoners think reform and its policies are generally racist. Why do you think that perception exists? What are you going to do about it?
Was that in October?
It was.
So just after party conference, when the whole Labour conference was about how racist and fascist we are. And that does permeate into the general public. But listen, I think that's changed. I think we fought back on that. And I don't think that is the perception now. And I don't know who they polled. But when I walked down London, I mean, I was stopped by a guy in full piercings with black nail polish saying, Leila, we're going to vote for you in London. I was stopped by a Jamaican guy on Ladbroke Grove saying, Leila, we love you, we're going to vote for you. Mm. That is the rhetoric that's pushed by the Labour Party and some in the Conservatives. And it might permeate a little bit after conference, but that is not, with the people I speak to, that is not the impression I get at all. And I think that if you poll it now, people have a different impression. And there is a misconception, I'm going to give it to you, there is a misconception against some people I speak to that reform is anti-immigrant, right? I even get that from my son was like, Mum, your mum's an immigrant. Are you going to kick her out? And I'm like, it's not anti-immigrant. It is about, number one, obviously illegal migration has to completely stop.
Of course, everyone said that. All parties.
Well, not really, because right now illegal immigrants are allowed to come in and they're granted asylum, right? But we want it to be treated that if you come on a boat, it is a crime and you are prosecuted, detained and deported for that, as the Border Act says. But that's not only 1% of illegal immigration is prosecuted. So we would, that would be a first stepping stone. And in terms of migration, our policy is always, we want controlled immigration and we want people to be a net contributor. In Dubai, there's only one visa and that's a work visa, because right now we have the highest tax burden since World War II, and we are paying for foreigners who've come on foreign cheap wages and can't support themselves, and the taxpayer's paying for it, and they just can't afford it anymore. And I think it's intrinsically unfair that people can come here and claim benefits when they're not British.
So you said when we talked about the vile social media attacks on you, that those people should sort of jog on. You don't want their votes. You know, it's.
And I don't think I'll get their votes.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, fair to assume. Now, the Reform candidate in a current by-election was endorsed last week by Tommy Robinson. This is not helpful, is it?
Listen, I think Tommy Robinson has his supporters. I wouldn't say they're all horrific because I know he has lots. I mean, that march that he organised was very well attended. So yes, he might have some aspects of his narrative might not be helpful, but he was the first to highlight, the grooming gangs.
Well, Pryor, the Labour MP back in the 90s, actually. To be fair.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I think some of his supporters may have said vile stuff about me.
I'm sure they.
Yeah, but I do think he has a large. He has a bigger support, and he does what he does, and Reform does what they do, and if it's helpful, I don't know.
Your new colleague, Suella Braverman, she said, this was last year, "I'm a proud British Asian, but I'm not English." Are you English?
I mean, ethnically, I'm not English. No, of course not. My parents are from Egypt. So if that's what she meant. I mean, the other day I was asked, how does your Muslim community feel? I don't have a Muslim community. My community is London. My community is Britain. And I don't want to be known as a Muslim Brit or a Muslim candidate. I am a British candidate, and that's it. And, in recent times, there has been this differentiation between British and English. I don't even know what it is. But no, I'm not ethnically English. But Britain's all I know. Britain is my country. I'm born and raised, and I'll defend it with all I've got. And that's all I can say on that. I just think there's so much focus on these nuanced ideas, and I think that actually splits us up. What the political class have done is that they've managed to split us into different demographics. Right now, if you're white working class, you're too privileged to get some help. And when you put people into different demographics, you pit them against each other, you pit their needs against each other, and you pit their priorities against each other. And it makes us seem that we're all fighting each other for what's needed. But actually, we are all British and we all have the same needs. And I listed them before, a government that actually serves us. And I think we should go back to that.
Okay. Final question. So we've had quite a nice, warm chat here, but you're a very prominent media figure. I see you on those panels, including many on GB News, and you are combative, right? So, some people would say she's too brutal. Some people would say she's incredibly effective at making an argument. Not for me to judge that. But I want to know, do you have a softer side? When was the last time you cried? Do you cry?
I do, actually. When I'm on those panels, I do miss being in court, having a criminal trial, and I do kind of treat them like I'm interrogating a criminal, because for me, some of the things they've done, they're not criminal, but they have destroyed the country. And I don't want to let them get away with gaslighting or defending it. And that's why I'm brutal. But, my sister passed away from cancer 3 years ago, and my sister were very, very, very close. And I was her carer, I actually left my job to take care of her and be with her every day. And she was one of the most energetic, incredible women. She'd be up at 6, jogging, working, and she raised 2 amazing kids. And watching her, the way cancer eats at someone, it literally, it nibbles, and eventually it gorges on that person and they lose everything, her and I were the only ones in the family that would only have leaf tea. We hated a tea bag. And when we travel, we'd always take a bag of leaf tea. And at the end, she couldn't even drink tea, and she survived to watch her son get married in her hospital. It was a house that was made like a hospital on the Friday. And she died on my birthday. And when she, they become lucid sometimes before they people die. And she woke up and said, "Happy birthday." And then she died. And if I stop and think about her, I do cry. Her passing away gave me a lot of energy, because you never know what waits tomorrow. You just don't know. And that's why I'm like, throw whatever you can at me. I've seen the worst. My father passed away in 2000. My husband left me. I've had some trauma. Luckily, my children are all good. But of course I cry. And actually, I think my kids would say I'm probably too soft with them. But on the panel, you know, the thing is, I'm not here to play nice, right? And I'm not here to abide by a political consensus like everyone else is. In fact, an unheard journalist wrote an article about me and he said, watching her, it's obvious that she's not interested in engaging in any kind of political consensus, because I really do believe that we have been let down so badly by a cabal of politicians and journalists who are so quick to defend each other and not defend the people. And that's how I feel I am when I'm on these panels.
Laila Cunningham, thoroughly enjoyed that chat.
Thank
you for your time.
Thank you, Gloria.